Thank you very much for taking time and joining us for today's session for digital transformation and microservices. I'm sure most of them might be getting ready for the year end, and also getting ready to welcome the new year. But I'm sure for today's session, digital transformation and microservices, there is a lot more to learn and a lot more to take from. So first, let me start introducing myself. My name is Vikas, and I'm responsible for the sales and marketing operations at Kelton Tech, and I would be acting as the moderator for today's session. And with me today, I have Russell Anrath, one of the regional sales guy for digital connected enterprise with Kelton Tech, and he carries about 10 years experience working with Kelton itself. And along with me, we have Praveen Changani, who is working as one of the digital connected enterprise technology expert with Kelton Tech, and who is carrying about 15 years experience in the IT industry, and with a deep experience in BPM and BRMS. So before I hand over this session to Russell and Praveen, let me tell you at end we have a 5-minute question and answer session. If anyone has any kind of questions, you can probably drop in on the right hand side on the chat panel, and we'll be happy to answer those questions at the end. And also let me inform you that this session is being recorded, and once we are done with this session, we will be happy to probably email you back with the video recording and for the today's session. So Praveen and Russell, the floor is all yours, and I'm sure we audience are looking forward to learn something about digital transformation and microservices from today's session.
Vikas, thank you. Good morning, everyone. Good afternoon or good evening, depending on where you're sitting. Again, my name is Russell Unrath. I'm a regional sales manager with Kelton Tech. I'm on the East Coast, and I'm focusing primarily in the Northeast. So this morning, we wanted to talk with you a little bit about who we are at Kelton Tech and the organic growth of the organization itself. We were founded in 1993 as a software development and professional services organization that offers end-to-end IT solutions with strategic consulting, product development, advisory services, focusing primarily, but not limited to, the areas of SMAC, social, mobile, analytic, and cloud, ERP and BPM, IoT, and cloud enablement. An interesting story is that where the name Kelton comes from is two gentlemen from Kellogg School of Management and Wharton Business School. So when you put those two together, combining different portions of those names, you get Kelton and Kelton Tech. We have multiple locations. We are now newly headquartered in Princeton, New Jersey, but we have a global presence with offices in Chicago, Illinois, Cupertino, California, McLean, Virginia, recently incorporated an office in Ireland, as well as multiple offices in Gurgaon and Hyderabad in India. One of the things that we'd like you to know about who we are and what we do is that Kelton Tech is infinite possibilities with technology. This is an organization that since its inception has been on the leading edge of technology, whether we're focusing on that in laboratory development, whether we're focusing on that with client success stories, pushing new information to the market, and disrupting the way business is done in general to impact bottom line results and bring success for our clients. That is our goal at the end of every day, of every project, and every engagement. We have a wide breadth and depth of range with our client base, as small as those go-get-em, scrappy upstart startups to large Fortune 500 companies, which we'll see in a few slides from now. We are a people and process-oriented organization. So what does that really mean? That means is we focus on driving the best results for the clients that we're engaged with. That means sometimes that we have to back off the throttle in order to achieve the right results. Sometimes that means moving faster than the speed of business, and sometimes that means moving a little slower than the speed of business in order to achieve the best and most accurate results. We are ISO 9001 certified, which is a process certification in ways of tracking errors, management, but more importantly, tracking the success of each project and being able to implement that going forward. We can take this ISO 9000 process and move it from project to project to project where applicable in order to get the right information forward for our clients and discuss the appropriate technologies, strategies, and overall business plans in order to get things moving in the right direction. We are publicly listed on the Bombay Stock Exchange, and we're working towards the goal of organic growth and going public in the market in North America as well. At this point in time, we have slightly over 1,100 employees. That's about 300 in the USA and 700 in India, and that number increases on a weekly basis. On average, we hire about 2 new individuals at the end of any given week or month, whether that be in our demand gen center, whether that be adding people to our sales team, to the back office support. We are in the business of growing and making our clients successful. And as we move on to our next slide, discussing a little bit more about our business units, we have 3 different areas that we practice in, but they're not limited to those things. We are integrating different technologies with different business units through a part of the organic growth and the acquisitions that Kelton Tech has taken on the last number of years. So who are we? Who is Kelton Tech? We are a company that provides digital transformation. We have a specific digital transformation business unit. We are trusted advisors for our clients. Our focus is to build mission-critical, revenue-generating, enterprise-class, and customer-grade applications. We want to be the nerve of your enterprise. We want to be the vein that runs through and drives business forward. We are customer-facing, unifying the customer experience for clients. We have an enterprise class with high availability and scalability for security and performance. And we want to make these transitions and integrations as simple as possible, even though that we all know deep down these things are complex, are detailed, and require weeks, months, and sometimes years of focus in order to implement the project. We have a digital connected enterprise business unit that I am specifically attached to but not necessarily tied down to. This is our systems of differentiation. It's a business process and orientation layers that allow us to drive business forward, to map out projects and different areas for our clients in order to drive the best business results forward. We also have an enterprise solution SAP business unit that focuses on being the system of record, that focuses on driving business and allowing you to track metrics in the most appropriate and accurate way, but it's not limited to just that specific technology. There's a disciplined and experienced team behind it. We are consistently hiring the best talent from some of the most prestigious universities in order to be the system of record, differentiation, and engagement. We understand that there is a large importance, especially in recent months and years, on the digital customer experience. What does that mean? It means to explore infinite possibilities with the technology and to disrupt business as usual in order to drive the most appropriate bottom line margins and success, more importantly, for our clients. And part of hiring the best talent is that we are thought leaders in technology adoption. We are one of the early entrants for the Internet of Things and for the SMAC providers, or the social, mobile, analytical, and cloud. We provide infinite transformation solutions, and we leverage these solutions with our clients. We leverage the successes we've had with our clients to drive new business, but more importantly, to drive success and cross-sell within the organizations that we work with. Our goal, ultimately, is to not just to be a system of engagement or a system of differentiation or a system of record, but the overlapping system that integrates the technologies you use so commonly each day, because we realize that in order to drive business forward, in order to move and generate better revenue and higher profits, that it's not just one particular technology that your business is tied to. It's not just SAP. It's not just an IBM or an SAG. This overlapping solution of digital transformation allows us to integrate multiple technologies where we have depth and breadth of experience with partners on many levels, engaging them in many projects and ultimately being successful for our clients. Kelton Tech is in the business of making clients successful, of driving their business forward, of driving their revenue forward, and moving forward from today, we are in the business of digitally transforming all of your business needs. And whatever that might look like, we have the expertise and the knowledge to back it up, especially in the areas of engagement, of differentiation, and of record. And we want to be that provider, that trusted business partner, not just another vendor on the list. We want you to be able to come to us for any needs you might have, to call us for the simplest of tasks, because you know that on the other end of Kelton Tech, you're going to get a voice and an answer, and a sales representative. You're going to get a technology representative like Praveen, someone in operations like Vikas, who's going to be there to understand what your need is and drive that need forward to make the best possible business decision. So as we move forward to talk about some of our clients, just a small segmenting in the industries that we adapt to. We have focused recently, if you can move forward to the next slide, please, Praveen, thank you, on things like retail, manufacturing, energies and utilities, financial services, and a whole cornucopia of other types of industries. Now, we are not limited to the 4 silos, these 4 pillars you see here, as you can see in the 5th column with accounts like Starbucks, Univision, Lutron Electronics, United Air. These successes we've had for our clients, just to touch on a couple of them very briefly, we have been able to implement a managed service strategy for a client, a large media client like Univision, with a multiple-year engagement that allows us to be the primary nerve center, the support for multiple streams of technology that are funneling in and filtering out to other portions of this business, whether it be their media outlet, their TV station, their radio presence, believe it or not. Kelton Tech has the depth of knowledge, has the right talent hired from the right universities with the appropriate educations to be able to drive business forward, to get people on site and working side by side with other team members. We do back-end support and programming and integrations for clients in the insurance sector, like New Jersey Manufacturers for one. We're currently in the middle of a large data set migration, going from an old technology to a new IBM stack technology that they're currently utilizing with some of their software requirements. We have been able to provide on-the-ground resources to integrate this technology for New Jersey Manufacturers Insurance in order to move them forward through 2017 and into the years that follow, being on the leading edge of the technologies that they've chose to implement in-house. We do much work with energy and utilities in the oil and gas sector specifically, but again, we're not limited to that work. We have a large presence specifically in the Carolinas with Duke Energy and Piedmont Energy, which is a recent acquisition of Duke Energy. And whether that's on-the-ground support, whether that's offshore support, or whether that's multiple phone calls on a twice-month or even weekly basis in some cases, depending on the workload of the month, in order to provide the most appropriate support. Another large area where Kelton Tech has been able to drive business forward and to disrupt the normal has been in retail and manufacturing, but specifically retail, with companies like Discount Tire, with Staples, with J. Crew, even with Ralph Lauren, with the Polo Associate Group. Kelton Tech has been on the leading front using technologies like MuleSoft to help drive e-commerce and DCM, digital commerce solutions, forward as well, with providing back-end infrastructure support with people at organizations like J. Crew, with programmers, with technologists, with strategic level advisors, with director level individuals who go in and work side by side with these teams, making the best possible solution for our clients. And that is our driving goal. That is what keeps us awake at night. That is what keeps us moving forward in the day, is how can we use the technology that we have at our hands in order to make our clients the most successful, but not only that, to give them the best that's possibly out there, and then to advise them on what's on the horizon, how they can integrate and implement this technology going forward. And we're doing that specifically with accounts like Discount Tire and with Lutron, with Univision, and we're working on it as well with Lutron out in Pennsylvania. So as we move forward, I want to discuss with you just one more slide before I turn this over to our next presenter, and that is our industry solutions and our domain experience. Now, as you see, we spoke about a couple things in the last slide with the different sectors, with banking and finance, with retail and manufacturing, our transportation and logistics, and specifically the energies and utilities where we're working in. But we are more than just solutions within these different silos. Now, as you can see, Kelton Tech has the depth of knowledge to implement multiple technologies, multiple strategies at any given time, depending on what your needs and wants are to move forward in your business. We are in the business of integrating technologies. So things like in banking, where you don't think about much about opening accounts loan origination. That seems like it's an everyday normal process, but with the world going digital with banking, with the onset even in years past of the mobile application, mobile banking, simple things going way back into history like interacting with an ATM, all those things require technology in the background. They all require people supporting those things, and we are in the people and processing business, if you recall. Things like ERP integrations and omni-channel services using new partners like MuleSoft to allow the digital experience, that online experience, to be better, richer, and fuller for your end clients and for the retail's end clients when you're online shopping for a new pair of shoes or a new suit or just something that you want to get your children one day. Even with using real-time dashboards, fleet management and transportation and logistics, think of this time of year with a UPS, with a DHL, a FedEx, even the United States Post Office. The amount of information that is being sourced, tracked, and delivered that we have at our fingertips, tracking the package on Amazon to see if it's out for delivery, has it been delivered, where on the house, is it on the front steps, is it on the back steps. We are a trusted partner for organizations such as that, allowing onboard and application services and real-time management for how and when these things take place. And again, not to gloss over it, but with energy and utilities, things like water management, things like integration and market participation. Knowing that in these different technologies, we have high-level partnerships with the partners on our back end, people like MuleSoft, like IBM, like being an SAP Gold partner, being a premier business partner with IBM. We have the knowledge, the depth, and the relationships, more importantly, to implement the right strategy and solutions for our clients. And that's what we're trying to do here going forward in 2017, and that's what we've been doing since 1993, implementing the right strategies, the right solutions, and hopefully our goal, as always, is to drive business forward and to have smiling, happy clients that have their end smiling, happy clients, so that we can together disrupt the way business is done, but do it in the best possible way, moving your business forward and moving our business forward in order to reach our common goals. So Praveen, I believe now I can turn this presentation over to you as we move forward with the more deep dive on our technologies, on some of the things that we've done more recently. So with that, Praveen, please take it away.
Thank you very much, Russ, for that excellent summarization of who we are as Kelton Tech, what we pride ourselves with as technologists, but also as people who understand the varying needs of different organizations and different businesses, the challenges that you face, and how we actually would like to partner with you and be part of your growth and innovation story. So thank you very much for that introduction, Russell. So today's discussion is really about digital transformation and microservices. We know that digital transformation and digital technologies are permeating every aspect of our lives, including the home, business, industry, and the wider society, thus creating new and innovative forms of value and transforming the way we do just about everything. So it's digital transformation as such is something we've been hearing all over the place lately, and it's this idea that that enterprises need to be able to apply digital technologies to create a more personalized experience for customers, to increase their brand visibility and really reach a wider target audience more precisely. So what exactly is digital transformation? We will talk about that in just a minute, but I just wanted to, before I actually got into that, I wanted to talk quickly about the core portfolio that Kelton Tech offers. We are on the leading frontier, as Russell mentioned, of providing digital transformation advisory services and enablement. We have very mature roadmaps of digital reference architectures. We provide services-oriented architecture, API, microservices, as well as ESB application integration portfolios, more along the lines of strategy and governance, but also centers of excellence, BPM solutions, process modeling, workflow, and rules automation, ultra-fast in-memory data management solutions for the enterprise, IoT technology using beacons, which is actually one of our inbuilt homegrown technologies that a lot of our retail customers and many other customers in different industries are talking to us a lot about. Pairing that with big data and analytics, both real-time as well as streaming, and then with the advent of faster and more digital environments, we offer public, private, hybrid cloud integration and infrastructure, again, advisory and enablement services. And last but not least, infrastructure modernization, continuous integration, DevOps, and annual maintenance service agreement, so AMS. So I just wanted to quickly highlight our core services portfolio from the Digital Connected Enterprise, and then now we can move on to the next slide. So what exactly is digital transformation? So we ask ourselves as we hear about this over and over again, every conference you go to, every webinar, most people in the industry are talking about this. But let's talk a little bit about this, and let's open up that that topic. First and foremost, what we are seeing is, in terms of the customer and their behaviors, is that they want more, they want it faster, they want it in a more integrated and a seamless user experience. So we are seeing that growth opportunities in new markets and the business disruptions occurring every day are causing an increase in competitive pressure, which in turn are driving a greater focus on innovation and the need to reduce overall cost and complexity. So this is this idea that businesses need to amplify innovation and reduce TCO, total cost of ownership. So you know, there are a couple of things here. You will notice that with big data, 90% of the data was created in the last 2 years alone. Mobile, we had in just 2013, more than 1 billion devices, smart devices, were shipped. As far as the social aspect, social media, 81% of customers depend on social websites for purchasing advice, such as Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, et cetera, et cetera. And with the cloud, what we're learning is that 62% of the total workload is going to be on the cloud by 2016. And as we are on the brink of 2017, that number is rapidly increasing every day. Internet of Things, there are going to be 50 billion, that's correct, billion with a B, devices will be connected to the internet by 2020. So that is your cars, your shoes, your glasses, your smart wearable devices, et cetera, et cetera. And all of this is going to be made possible via means of a more connected world. And with the API economy, we know that 85 billion in 2013, and a forecast is expected to rise to 120 billion by 2015, and estimated to 1 trillion by 2017. So what we are seeing here is we're really at an inflection point right now about how business will be done and how business and technology will work together. But one thing's clear, and that is that as a result of these changes we're experiencing every day, with this incredible explosion of information, the next generation of information age, which is happening at a rapid and more accelerating pace than ever before, this concept of an anytime, anywhere computing phenomenon is resulting in an enormous load from multiple clients. Not just your PCs, but you know, your computers, your cell phones, your iPads, connected TVs, connected cars, and all of those clients are putting an enormous load on the technology infrastructure and things that can and should be connected but aren't connected just yet. This means that as the demands of the consumer continue to rise, the more disconnected things are, the more difficult it'll be to deliver that seamless connected user experience the consumer is looking for. And hence, there is a need to drive the inherent complexity of all these things to a more connected state. So businesses, CIOs, senior practitioners, and industry leaders, be it in the public or private sector, are taking into consideration all these facts and are looking at what they need to do to be able to pull off all this together. And they are first looking at their business models, but also their infrastructure to enable this anywhere, anytime demand, so that composite applications and services that are interacting with each other can produce meaningful data and produce a better customer experience. So as they begin to embark on this digital transformation journey, there's a certain realization that dawns on the C-suite of executives. And that is that it's going to be critical to have a theme of digital transformation and architectural freedom in this context, because the option is digital transformation and architectural freedom that empowers you to drive innovation up and interoperability, which is critical to the forward-looking agenda in the industry, or the opposite of that, which is a non-starter. Hence, everything we are doing as catalysts to drive towards this next generation of information age should be focused on increasing innovation and reducing and driving down the total cost of ownership. So, digital transformation now, APIs are a very hot topic in the industry right now, but what really is an API and why is it different from old school application programming interfaces? Well, modern APIs are a flexible way of projecting your capabilities to an audience outside your own team. So you want to think of an API as a product you carefully craft so that it is attractive to the intended customer or consumer, and so that it sells. It doesn't matter if the consumer really pays for an API or whether the consumer is internal or external. The point is, consumption of the API brings value to both parties. And in this second generation of online platforms, marketplaces for services rising, what we're seeing is, along with the various changes that we're seeing, many mobile-enabled urban millennials believe that they should get what they want, products, services, and work when they want it. So if you take a look at, for Uber, for example, the world's largest taxi company owns no vehicles. Airbnb, the world's largest accommodation provider, owns no real estate. Alibaba, the most valuable retailer, has no inventory. Facebook, the world's most popular media owner, creates no actual content. Walgreens has been able to digitally transform themselves by and increase their photo service revenue by 6 times compared to the revenue from the local store at the corner of happy and healthy. Barcelona, we talked a little bit about IoT, are using sensors and APIs which are open for all trash containers to share information when to pick up trash. Expedia, 90% of revenue from APIs is being derived, and they're realizing this at an increasing pace. With respect to eBay, they're realizing 60% of their revenues from APIs. So depending on the needs of your organization, whether the APIs need to be internal or external, the idea is that you reuse, share, and monetize core business assets to increase market advantage and extend business models. Moving on, a recent study from GSM Association highlighted the fact that there was a forecast of $4.5 trillion by 2020, which is to say that connected life is everything that is going to be connected how we interact, how consumers interact with services, whether it's through their mobile devices, their cars, their buildings, their sensors. And so we have some statistics on what the top 10 are going to be by 2020. Connected cars, clinical remote monitoring, assisted living, home and building security, pay-as-you-go drive car insurance, new models for car usage, smart meters, traffic management, electrical vehicle charging, and building automation. So there is an emphasis here on connected, and that's what's really, really important, and that's why I think that this is, we are at an inflection point with digital transformation. Disruptors are reinventing business processes and leading with digital transformation to attack these various business needs and challenges that are coming up every day. So we are seeing that they're doing this by a more personalized frontline decision-making process. New mobile applications are consolidating decision-making at the fingertips of people who need to act. So they have the rapid speed, they have that quick, instantly gratifying experience on their phones. But then with respect to real-time insight and processes that are driven as such, we are deriving insight from non-traditional data sources as well, which are then being infused into business processes to create a more meaningful and better business moments and outcomes. Ecosystem-based innovation. New innovations are composed leveraging digital services from a broad ecosystem. So, it's the reason, and part of the reason we have to ask ourselves why digital transformation is picking up a lot of steam is it's really based on four main foundational pillars. Mobility, which is in terms of mobile devices, smartphones, tablets, the primary way of doing things and getting things done. So this is one big transition that's happening in the technology arena. The Internet of Things, like sensors we talked about, to be able to better utilize the information, and as a result of that information provide an overall better user experience, more, not just better, but also more accurate, more targeted. 3, the data that these two, that is mobility and IoT, generate and what you can use to make of that is the third key thing. So I'm going to branch that under data analytics. And then the fourth is the move to the cloud, getting everybody into that infrastructure that can handle the loads in a very connected way, which makes it easier for enterprises to actually drive innovation up and not worry so much about infrastructure and getting little things like taking 2 weeks to get a security permissions profile set up, but having their developers focus more on the business models and what they need to do as a company to innovate. So these four big technology transitions have been happening all the different phases individually, but now they're all coming together and accelerating at a pace we have never seen before. So these four things, which in essence are driven by the consumer behavior and the increased expectations, and all that's causing this phenomenon is digital transformation. Organizations are realizing that in order to remain competitive and thrive, they will have to use one or more of these four technology paradigms in order to be able to deliver services and keep their customers loyal and happy. So we talked a little bit about what digital transformation is. Now, how do we actually get there? Thomas Edison had a famous quote where he said, "Vision without execution is hallucination." And I think this is a really interesting quote because what we're saying is that, look, we understand what it's going to take to go from point A to point B, but you need to have a digital roadmap. You need to have a strategy. It can't just be project-based. It has to be the kind of phenomenon where you make a strategy and you evangelize that kind of thinking, where you actually entertain innovation within the company. So there's a cultural change aspect to it as well, which I'll talk about a little bit later. So we know that enterprise computing is changing. There is a need to move from products to platforms. Companies can't simply buy this transformation and innovation from the shelf, which in the past organizations would be able to actually buy packaged up applications by following the theory that there would be innovation built into those packages. But what we're seeing now, the trend is that companies will now actually have to self-innovate. So they will actually need to, for their own specific industry and business models, they will need to evolve. And what we are seeing is that eventually we will see in digital transformation the way business and IT used to work in the past will slowly fade, because a shift in paradigm will occur whereby IT will eventually be so fine-grained into the business that in the digital age, IT will become the business. And therefore, it's very important to have a roadmap to get there. So there are the traditional barriers. There's organizational types of barriers. There are technology barriers. This slide typically talks to the notion that when you have an organization, they are built on certain values, core values, and cultural beliefs. So challenges under the people segment would be that you would have to require collaboration across lines of business, IT, and business ecosystems like never before. Get smarter, get faster, but they're also going to have to learn about the business models themselves. They will have to develop those proficiencies. With respect to the processes, the business processes and transactions that span multiple environments will demand greater security, visibility, and control at each point, and will need to be able to mitigate any kinds of new risks. So you will have to have better access controls, better monitoring in the digital age. And last, but certainly not the least, technology will have to be fast, secure, with controlled access to the data. So identifying the data, integrating it, and analyzing it with the right data streams across diverse ecosystems is going to be paramount. And having some sort of flexibility so that you can use any data and applications on various devices, and having that comfort factor, knowing that they will work seamlessly, is going to be important. So those are some of the organizational types of changes. If we dive a little bit deeper into the technology aspects, we learn that digital transformation is going to require multi-speed IT, which means you will actually, in the business community, will need to be friends with IT, and that IT will need to change. Because the days of having a long, drawn-out software development lifecycle, SDLC, will slowly migrate into a more continuous delivery through agile type of a phase where you're doing development and operations in a more seamless and a more connected and integrated way. So not only is the business experience need to be upgraded, so does the IT infrastructure and platforms and processes and mechanisms that we have internally will also have to be upgraded. So seamless workload portability based on need at any point in time, collaborative innovation on top of enterprise systems through microservices, which I will talk about a little bit later, and APIs, as well as having secure interactions across on-premise IT, hybrid, and public clouds. Okay, so now that we've learned a little bit about digital transformation, the reason I wanted to talk about microservices, which is an emerging topic as well, in addition to digital transformation, I wanted to talk a little bit about the role of microservices, some common characteristics, and a contrast with, let's say, services-oriented architecture, which some of us might be more familiar with or accustomed to for over the last 10 years or so. So as we begin to make this transition into the digital age, one thing I think is vital to understand is that software applications are large drivers of business revenue. And the timely release and deployment of those applications has become a critical part of the business life cycle. So after all, what good is it to create an innovative application if you can't deploy it to a test environment officially or deliver it to the production users on schedule and on time? Hence, in IT, in technology, we will need to come up with innovative ways to speed things up, but also to better collaborate with the business. So microservices plays an important role in this because the basic idea with microservices is that you contrast it with your traditional monolithic application. A monolithic application, as you are aware, is where you have various capabilities and functions that you want to provide and put them all into an application, into a single process, and you think of it as one big thing that you go to when you need something. But the microservice approach, in contrast, at a high level, is trying to take each of those capabilities and functions and putting them into separate processes. So instead of having one big monolithic process, you have this network of communicating processes. So microservices from that standpoint is more flexible in approach because you can't put different you can put different services on different machines. So if some services get more loads than others, they can have more copies and instances made. This so if we start to go now into the common characteristics of a good microservices architecture, there are 9 of them here. I'm not going to talk about all of them. I just want to talk about a few in the interest of time and getting my point across. Let's talk about componentization via services. Software, as we know, should be broken up via components, and it would be good to have things broken up in a way that they work well together. Ralph Johnson talks a lot about this when he gives a beautiful analogy about how you build. You should think about building software like building a stereo, where you have an amplifier, you have speakers, you have a CD player, you have a tape player. You know, back in the day. The central idea here being is that you can replace and upgrade any of these pieces independently so that, you know, if I want to get an improved amplifier, I don't have to change the entire stereo system. So you can contrast that to like a boombox, which would be analogous to the monolith, where if one piece stops working, then you have to either replace the whole thing or get it fixed. And that would take longer. The next thing is organizing around business capabilities, and I think this is probably the most important. Traditionally, you see a lot of organizations focus around technology itself, so a UI team, a server team, a database team. The microservices view of the world is that we should instead organize around business functions, such as orders, shipping, a catalog. The general idea here being that each team is focusing on the end user and experience themselves. Next would be smart endpoints and dumb pipes. This idea, when we talk about services and services-oriented architecture, it typically means that, you know, we have some sort of very powerful piece of middleware which will automatically do all kinds of great things like messaging and business rules. This, of course, is the ESB, the Enterprise Service Bus, or, you know, known to some of us as the egregious spaghetti box. But microservices looks at that and says, you know, the community looks at that way of doing things, and it rejects this notion, and it says, look, instead of building the smarts into the pipeline, into that ESB, the smarts ought to actually move towards the endpoints themselves. So we still want everything to connect together, the endpoints themselves. We want them to be able to route messages. It should be able to, but the smartness really is starting to shift towards the smart points and the applications and services themselves. So business logic, routing logic, etc. Decentralized data management. So again, if we were to think about a monolithic world, we think of all the data sitting in one big relational database, such as Oracle or DB2, and typically the service-oriented architecture approach is built, you know, in a way where you're basically pulling all that data from a logically large database. The microservices approach says every service should be responsible for its own data and persistence. So the obvious advantages here being that it eliminates the traditional mess of integrating through a database, and which causes sometimes endless problems across an enterprise. You have to get all the people in the company involved at times from a technology point of view and start fixing and finding out what went wrong where. But the second advantage of having a microservice is that it frees up the individual services to grow and to architecturally evolve. So if a service doesn't really need a relational database and can do just fine with like a NoSQL database, and that works well for that service, then that's great. It's more flexible. You don't need to actually put additional unnecessary load on a relational database where an application does have that requirement. Next, we have infrastructure automation. To make all of this work, it's really important to have infrastructure. So a lot of things such as continuous delivery, continuous integration, DevOps allows you to put stuff into production at a more rapid pace. And with respect to designing for failure, with microservices, you know, you have more flexibility, you have more decentralized services and applications. So with that comes this idea that you're going to need better monitoring in place. So monitoring actually becomes critical, and that's where designing for failure is so important. It's this idea that when something goes wrong, that you can quickly spot out what went wrong and where. So if you were going to have remote services that are bound to fail, and more if you distribute them across various nodes, that's where monitoring is going to be critical going forward in the digital age. So those are some of the various characteristics I wanted to highlight, and I hope this gives you a bit of flavor of what people talk about when they talk about microservices. But it still begs the question, is this really SOA? Is this services-oriented architecture, or is this just rebranded in a new term and a new coined term all of a sudden? You know, and that begs the subsequent question, which is, what is services-oriented architecture? And there are so many definitions of that everywhere. So traditionally, services-oriented architecture and the community that are proponents of that way of thinking are displeased with microservices people because they claim that, well, we've been doing this all along, and you're now coming and you're doing essentially the same thing and just calling it microservices. But traditionally, with services-oriented architecture, you're really talking about some kind of an enterprise service bus, which means you have committees of people defining standards and governance, how services are supposed to react to each other. It's a very different world. There's bureaucracies that are built right into it based on the company's culture, and as a result, sometimes you're not always able to move as fast as you'd like to, depending on the needs that the business has. So you get into this endless loop of you know, going through an SDLC change for a minor software update and making sure everybody at the enterprise service bus level approves of that change. So the correct way to contrast services-oriented architecture and microservices is to think of services-oriented architecture as a broader spectrum and microservices as a subset, like a finer grain of services. Okay, so with that, we know that the infrastructure and application decisions you make today will drive the innovation models you build on them tomorrow. To the extent that the innovation models need to be agile, broken, and service-centric, if the technology infrastructure and architecture underneath is dated and closed, that will inhibit the trajectory of your innovation models and your success. It is that simple logic that is driving our strategy at Kelton Tech and making all the bets that we have been making with you, with our customers, with the community, both upstream and downstream. Because Kelton Tech understands that CIOs and senior practitioners are looking to become much more application-centric, much more service-centric by looking at the technology landscape and the inherent complexity that goes with it as infrastructure starts to tap the boundaries of Moore's law with the physics of density, and you start to overcome that with cloud enablement, with a digital transformation, clustering, parallelism. So with all that complexity, practitioners are saying, we have to do something to abstract all this into a layer of manageability where we can manage the infrastructure in a much more business-centric way via means of, and have all that virtualized via means of a physical, virtual, private, public, and hybrid cloud, making sure that the workloads are properly orchestrated and managed. So the big bet that Kelton Tech we are making, that Gartner is predicting, that all the various industry experts are talking about now, is that digital transformation and this idea of converged resource management is actually going to meet the real agenda of the service centricity and the business and the growing business needs. So I wanted to highlight that because I feel Kelton Tech, as Russell mentioned earlier, we really are on the leading frontier of this. And there are a number of reasons why we are good at what we do. And you know, one in particular that I would like to highlight is that our professionally certified teams are internally aligned with various business partners and technology centers of excellence, whether it be IBM, SAP, Microsoft, Software AG, WebMethods, and most recently MuleSoft. Therefore, the kind of flavor that we bring and the perspective that we bring to the table with our advisory and delivery capabilities is much more technology agnostic and not just vertical, but also horizontal in our approach. So with that, I'm going to turn it back to Vikas. Vikas, if there were any questions that came up, I'd be happy to answer them right now. If you have any technology questions for me or business questions for Russell, we'd be happy to take those at this point. And again, thank you very much, everybody, for taking the time today to join. Back to you, Vikas.
Well, thank you, Praveen. Thank you, Russell. It was really helpful, and thank you in explaining in detail about the digital transformation. Well, yes, we have a couple of questions coming in from the audience today. So let me first go through those. We have first coming in from one of the audience asking in, what would you identify as the biggest obstacle to enterprises who may want to go digital through a digital transformation but are getting stuck?
Right, great question, and thank you for that. I think one of the biggest obstacles is the sheer operational structure of organizations, that cultural aspect that I talked about. I mean, organizations are built on management infrastructures which by nature are designed to support and reinforce existing paradigms. So within those management structures, you have to be, you have a very human system of governance, which includes the traditional bureaucracy, etc. So these traits define the culture of the company, which usually tend to be risk averse. So everything that you reward, everything that you tolerate or refuse to accept, that's your culture. But there are also individuals in those organizations who truly believe that there has to be a better way to operate, to be more efficient. They have the innovative spirit and they want to spread their ideas. So the biggest question really is whether they can push through the existing management structure and have their ideas brought to the forefront where partners like Kelton Tech, technology partners, can actually assist them with digital roadmaps. So I would say culture is probably the most important, but that's also slowly diminishing because I think CIOs are increasingly recognizing that there is a need for this and they need to partner with partners like Kelton Tech to deliver very, very good and effective digital roadmaps. Thank you for that question.
Thank you, Praveen. We have one more question. Here it goes. Do you think it's important for enterprises to design their customer experience as part of digital transformation?
Absolutely. I mean, I think that that's very, very relevant. You know, there's this idea that companies need to change because the times are changing. But then there's also this idea that companies need to innovate, who want to be, because they want to be beloved by this new generation of customers. Understanding what it takes to be successful in that regard means you need to understand how people, that is your customers, are different than previously thought. But also it's taking those insights and applying them to to the infrastructure of your organization so that you can work differently and compete differently. When you invest in technology and expertise for reasons other than being simply profitable, it shifts the perception and definition of success. This shift in perspective also shifts our view of what it means to work. It gives way for a new culture that's entirely human-centered, and yet there are so many companies who sometimes don't recognize this, that opportunity. So it is absolutely essential to enable your digital transformation around your customer needs. So very good question. Thank you for that.
Thank you very much, Praveen, once again. Well, we have two more questions coming in. One question coming in from Andrew. He says it sounds like as enterprises that go digital, IT will become more mainstream and relevant. Is that an accurate assessment?
It absolutely is. I think IT is and will become even more stream in the near future. So businesses, please become friends with your IT counterparts. You know, you will need to work more closely with IT, but it also means for IT that we will have to reinvent ourselves and learn more about the business knowledge and the business domains and the processes. In addition to revitalizing our infrastructure and communication mechanisms, we will have to broaden our horizons to learn more about the business models themselves. And I also think that IT will have to take some lessons from history and from the Industrial Revolution and become more commoditized. Commoditized in a good way, you know, so more commoditized, more mass-produced, but also make sure that technology is not just easily accessible, but relevant to consumers. And that's going to be the defining moment for technology, being able to, you know, take that leap of faith and say we can learn the business, but we can also make technology so specific and relevant to our customers. Very good question. Thank you. Any other questions?
Yes, Praveen, we have one more question left out, but before that, audience, let me tell you that you can drop us an email which is provided on the right-hand side chat box. And also, as I said earlier, we would be providing the video recording of this session once the session is done within 24 to 48 hours. And, you know, let's take the final question and wrap up the webinar session for today. So there is one question coming in while you were talking about granularity for microservices. Can you please expand on that a bit, Praveen?
Expand on the granularity of microservices. Sure.
Absolutely.
So the thing is, in microservices architecture, services should have a smaller granularity, a smaller footprint, and the protocol should be lightweight in nature. So central to the microservices philosophy and architecture is that you have services that should be independently deployable, because the benefit, of course, of that is being able to distribute different responsibilities of the system into smaller services, which enhances the cohesion and decreases the coupling, something we are, you know, traditionally we are plagued with in IT. But by doing this, this makes it easier to change, to adapt, to add functions and qualities to the system at any given time. It also allows for, say, the architecture of an individual service to emerge through continuous refactoring and perhaps reduce the need for a big upfront design. You know, so by allowing for releasing software early and continuously without disrupting the business cycle. This is this notion of DevOps, which is development and operations teams working together. So hopefully that sheds some light. Any other questions? Thank you for that one.
No, Praveen, that is it right now. Thank you very much for that, and thank you everyone for attending our today's webinar, and I really appreciate for taking out time on your last working day of this year, and I'm sure you had a fruitful 2016, and wish you Happy New Year and a prosperous 2017 for everyone. And as I said earlier, we will follow up email with you within 24 to 48 hours with the video recording of today's session. And if you have any questions, you can just drop an email on the right hand side email ID, and we'll be happy to answer back quickly. Thank you very much, and once again, Happy New Year, guys.